everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis and Nate, your two dads, your two the fathers you never asked for, but here we are anyway. I'm here to give you some advice, I guess. What's up, Nate?
Oh, not a whole lot. I'll say we haven't formally changed the name to What a Hell of a Way to Dad yet, but I think that's on the cards because that's just what it's going to be. Two dads, one with a soon-to-be newborn baby girl and one with a soon-to-be double digits in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah,
I remember all those photos of you posting with your daughter when she was an absolute infant when, and now it's like not too long from now, it's going to be she's going to be double digits. She's going to be a 1 before all those numbers.
Yeah. She's got a lot of opinions right now. It's great. When you're smart people and you have a kid, that kid ends up being smart and very, she's very emotionally intelligent, and that's something that we foster in her, which is great. But unfortunately, it also turns around and bites you in the ass a lot because, like, she does sometimes talk like a fucking teenager, and it's like, you are 7 years old. Stop this. But she also reads constantly, and she's my perfect example. Like, I always get people who are like, oh, homeschool kids are always so weird, and it's like, and they're socially stunted. And like, first off, I remember high school. There were a lot of socially stunted people in school, and secondly, my child will talk your ear off about everything. So don't worry about her not being able to talk to people. She will make friends where she does.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this too, that, I don't think there's a guarantee that someone who's homeschooled won't be able to be social. And certainly, like, anyone who went to public school, which I now feel weird. It's weird, like, because if I say state school in America, like, that makes you think we're talking about a state university and not like what we call public school. But here, public school means like a very fancy private school. And what we would call public school, they call state school. And so it's like, I know my audience is American. And I will speak fucking Americanly. However, it's one of those things where I get confused. But like plenty of people who went to public school, you'll know, like, you'll meet people that are fucking not so well socialized at all because, like, for one reason or another. And so, like, there's no guarantee on that. But man, we're gonna be dads. What a hell of a way to dad. And I actually have a dad experience that I'm gonna ask you.
Okay.
Without going into too much details, I have to have a routine surgery pretty soon, so I'm going to be out. Can't really do much physical work. It'll be a little while before I can do anything physical.
Isn't it a good thing you're a podcaster?
It is, yeah, sure, exactly. Although, like, weirdly, like, even stuff, lifting things, it's just, want to be careful with sutures and things like that. So, it's like even like moving stuff for the music equipment, recording equipment, etc. I have to be careful. However, right before this happened,
Johannes has to take a little sabbatical.
Yeah,
I guess.
A little sabbatical. Johannes Valk and the Clogheads have to go hang out and spend time with their families back in Rotterdam and Leiden and wherever else in the Netherlands they live. With every city is like 20 minutes from each other because you can the country is like the size of one county in America. I was about to wash my hands after using the bathroom before we started recording, and the tap, the handle on the faucet in the bathroom, which for British listeners will know, this is a mono tap. So basically, it in Britain, like, you constantly have, most places in the old configuration will have a separate tap handles, fuck, help me out, dude. Like, I'm
like
so used to the way
you got
the
a hot and you got a cold.
Right, like the hotline, and like oftentimes there'll just be two faucets, two right. Faucets. But
it took England a while to come across to gain the idea of running two lines of water to one thing.
The Brits have a particular weird thing about this that
is it also set up so that, like, you have to hold it on?
No, the thing is, the one that just broke was cheaper than fuck, but it's actually a mono unit, so it joins the hot and the cold water pipe, so it does the mixing for you. It's just you turn it left or right for hot or cold. Problem is, of course, it's a landlord special and it's the cheaper than fuck, so it broke, and it broke in such a way that there's like a little plastic kind of key holding the pieces into like the valve, and that is like not only broken but really like corroded looking. So I know there's zero way you can repair it. Like, it's going to need to be replaced, and like it doesn't look like it would be particularly easy to replace it, like in terms of just putting a new handle on. Like, I genuinely think you've got to replace the whole unit.
Yes, you would have to replace the whole thing, which is, and I mean, that's how you generally don't buy, and I don't know in England, but here, when you're putting a new vanity in, or you're replacing the faucet, it does come as one piece. Like it will be the thing that turns it on, the handles as well as the faucet, and then all the lines running down. It is fairly simple depending on the configuration to change those out. Like it's plumbing, but plumbing in that way that like everything is outside of the wall, so you need a wrench and you need to know how to turn your water off to that area. So like as long as you have all of that, you should be able to do that.
But the question that I have is whether or not I'm inviting disaster and or stressing myself out and or like it's going to be a thing that I should just pay someone to do, because while I'm like I'm going to feel like a huge baby if it's like the equivalent of pulling a nail out of drywall with the back of a hammer and paying a plumber to come in and do it. But at the same time, like, I don't know because I've never done this. Like, I've fixed pipes before in the sense of like pipes that were clogged where you had to remove the segment and clean them out. Things where like the segments, like the threading had come undone, so it wasn't sealing, and you had to replace like a junction in a pipe, like a segment of PVC piping. I've done that before. But I obviously know how to turn the water on and off on sinks and fucking toilets and stuff like that. That's easy. But I've never done this before. And I mean, it does at present look pretty well seated in there, on top of the porcelain of the sink. And so I'm like, am I inviting disaster? Is this like the absolute worst time for me? Because I don't want to have like the bathroom sink downstairs where you can't wash your hands. Like you literally cannot turn the water on right now. And so
I will tell you, if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, hire a guy.
Okay.
Like it's never going to be like it. Again, I would be comfortable with it, but because I have watched it be done in a house, I have, seen and I have participated in changing these things out before. So I would be comfortable with it. If I lived down the street from you, I would say, fuck it, buy me a pizza and a 6-pack and I'll come and fix it myself. But if you're not comfortable with something, especially when it comes to electric or because there's so many like little things that you might miss. Like there's plumber's tape that like when you're screwing the lug, like the water line into the faucet itself, you want to have something called plumber's tape. And what it is just a little thing that you wrap around the threads, and it's just like a little extra. It's a very thin layer, but when you thread the new lines into it, it doesn't leak. It's just an extra thing to keep it from dripping. You'll need to have some kind of sealant to, like when you set it in, that you can run around it, and you need to know how to make sure that you're using the correct sealant to make it watertight, and that you're doing what you need to do to make it look nice and everything. Like I had to recently reseal my bathroom or my bathtub not too long ago, and it's just a whole like it's a pain in the ass. And it's one of those things that it's a pain in the ass, but if you know what you're doing, you can save a couple of bucks doing it yourself. And you can, if you have like the couple of tools that you need, then you're good to go. Like I have amassed so many tools over, owning a fucking old ass Victorian home, and then now owning the house that I have, which was a rental property for 20 years. So there's always shit that needs to be fixed in it. So I have some background in it and tinkering around and doing like a 85% good job taking care of these things. But yeah, if you don't have the if this is like I just need this one thing fixed and I'm not planning on ever doing this again, like I will never have to replace a faucet again, because you won't. You're leaving England. You're leaving that place in general. There's no reason to like, oh, I got to pack all my plumber's tools that I've suddenly amassed. Nah, just hire somebody. It'll be a lot easier for you. It'll be done faster, and you won't have to worry about it. And if it gets fucked up, you have somebody that you can call and yell at, because if you fuck it up yourself, the only person getting yelled at is you by your wife.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing that I was thinking, is that like it's just the wrong moment to be doing this. And it's like, the dad urge to do DIY and do it yourself and solve the problem without hiring someone versus the like practical urge that I just don't want to deal with the problem. So I did at least take measurements today, because I called a service yesterday and I was like, can you just fix this? And they were basically like, we don't make aesthetic decisions on which taps to use because people are never happy with our decisions. So you have to buy a tap that fits and then we'll come and install it for you. So I was like,
it's not even your place. Like, who gives
I know
a
it's
shit?
fucking. I don't know, and I should just call the landlord, but I'm like, I don't want to fucking deal with the landlord because she's gonna insist on her guy doing it, who probably lives in like fucking deep Surrey or Epsom or somewhere, and he's not gonna be busy or he's not gonna be available for like 4 weeks. So I'm just gonna be sitting with this broken ass fucking faucet for a month. It's like I just don't care, and it's like the service was quoting me like it's not cheap. It's like $80 an hour, like it was like 70 pounds an hour or some shit, which I don't know how long it'll take. And the tap, the replacement set is about the same. It's about 70 pounds. And it's like, that's annoying. And I don't want to fucking pay. I already pay so much in fucking rent. But I also don't want to wait for fucking 4 weeks and not be able to wash my hands after I use the toilet downstairs. Like, it's just, I fucking hate renting so much. But you know what I hate even more? Is this piece of shit house. And I would never want to buy it. Like,
only £1 million, right?
Yeah, like who knows how much. I mean, the UK's property market is kind of in the toilet right now because they raised interest rates significantly, and you know the property values going up, inflating, and et cetera, has been like the sole generator of like wealth growth in this country outside of money laundering for so long. But it's becoming a lot more challenging for people to afford the insane mortgages, you know, for those insane prices when the base rate from the Bank of England is 4.5%. Like I think a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was like 0.25%.
Which is insane because like our parents bought houses at 12%.
Right, but the houses relative to their incomes, the houses were not that expensive. So like if you had a 12, like if you were, I don't know, if you had an 8% mortgage, but you only owed like $150,000 on a place, you know, like if you bought a place and say it was like $200,000 or $180,000 and you put 20% down, and so your principal was $150,000, and it's like your payment would be like $1,500 a month or something like that. Like I'm rough math here, and if it went up to 12%, your payment would be like $2,000 a month, which sucks. It's a huge increase, but like $1,500 or $2,000 is less than I've paid in rent in like the last decade per month anywhere I've lived. So like, it sucks, but it's manageable. But like obviously with housing prices constantly inflating, if your principal is $700,000 and then it goes up from 8 to 12%, or God, you know, fuck, hope you're not doing 8% on a fucking $650,000 loan. You know, whatever, then it's a huge, that's the killer. So it's like, yeah, our parents had 12% interest in the early 80s, but also like, you know, if the median income was $10,000 and the median house price was $30,000, like it's a lot different than it is now. And that's what it was like in this country too. The boomers always love complaining about the high interest rates. And it's like, you literally could get discounted mortgages from your employer. Like you could buy a house on a single income and like an entry level job, like an hourly job. And like, yeah, it was 12% on like a home that cost £12,000 and you were earning £5,000 a year. It's like, that's a little different now. It's like, I don't really think there's very many jobs where you're like 19 and entry level starting a job in this country. And it's like, oh yeah, well, you can pay like, you know, 3 times your annual income is a reasonable house price. And it's like, oh, so what you're saying is the median house price in London is like £600,000. So you're saying like entry level 19-year-old unskilled job you come into and it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna make 200 grand a year. That's normal. You can expect that. Like that's the difference there. So yeah, like it's stupid.
Yeah, my wife often talks about like how her parents told her, you know, you buy more house than you can afford, and then you end up like, you make more money because you know you're in theory you advance in your career and everything, and then you can eventually afford to own the house. But you know, a lot of people end up being what's known as house poor or car poor because they're just like, yeah, I have this house that I bought, but I spent all of my money goes into the house, so I don't really have any money to spend anywhere else. And that shit worked for them. Like they bought the house that they had for like $30,000 and they sold it for $500,000. And like, you know, thumbs up. That's great for you guys. They moved out of that house. They got a nice condo and everything. Happy for them and all that. But like, meanwhile, we're trying to sell my wife's old house. Has been sitting on the market for like 2 months at this point, and like for like $100,000. But it's a little shotgun house. And what we're kind of discovering is that like people don't want to buy a house that needs any kind of work. And like the house that we're selling is good. It's solid. You know, it's ready to move into and everything like that. It does require, like, it is for one person. It's, you know, a shotgun house. It's a living room, a bedroom, and a kitchen, and then a nice big backyard. But people don't want to move into a place where they have to fix shit up because they don't have time. They don't have time, or they don't have the inclination. They don't have the ability. and they don't want to because we're also fucking busy doing 10 other things at any given time. You know, like I'm able to do some of these things because like my multiple revenue streams at this point, like I've got them situated and scheduled to a point where like, okay, now I can fit in, you know, along with I've got my regular job. I've got, you know, the podcast, I've got the online store, and I'm a dad. So also I can work in gardening. I can work in some extra stuff because I've been, you know, again, I've been doing this long enough at this point. I know where to slot things, but like your average millennial, especially younger millennials, and your average Gen Zer doesn't want to do that stuff. So, and of course also like shit is just expensive. Like my wife bought the house that we're selling for like, I think she said $49,000. And she's still got like $32,000 left on it or something like that. So, you know, we stand to, you know, it's a good, and what we're selling it for is a good price, but you know, it's people walk into it and they're just like, this isn't the grayscale house that I was looking for.
Yeah,
you
the
know,
Property Brothers haven't fucking, you know, done their sensual splashes all over this. So, yeah, I don't like it.
Exactly. And like, and it kills me because like it is a perfect, because it's like got all original woodwork in it. It's got great windows. It's just one of those, like it needs a specific person. And
it's very funny to me though, too, because it's just a reminder that if I hadn't been, I mean, obviously like I didn't like living in the Midwest. I certainly didn't like living in Indiana. If I was going to return to the Midwest, which I'm not going to, I would basically pick Chicago or Minneapolis. And let's be real, between those two, it's going to be Chicago because Minneapolis winter is so much worse. But
well, is it?
I mean, Chicago's got
that lake.
It's got the lake effect snow and it's windy, but in Minneapolis, like it'll legit snow every day. And then like when it's not snow, it's like, oh, a break from the snow. It's just minus 30. Like that really wears on you. And it's like, I'm not old, but you know, I'm let's say I'm about to start the back half of my life, and I just wouldn't want to be that cold all the time. Also, Chicago in summer is absolutely gorgeous. It's unbelievably nice I mean, there are some days when it's like insanely hot and you just think to yourself like, man, I put up with all this cold for so long and then I get this and now I'm like living in Satan's asshole. Like it's just, but I love Chicago, honestly, like for all of its Chicago is a wonderful city. But Chicago, basically the reason why Chicago didn't turn out like Cleveland or Detroit is because it was run by like a segregationist authoritarian family dynasty. And a lot of people in Chicago really liked it that way. And now some things have changed. And as a result, like there are aspects of it that just you butt up against, like anytime you ever hear anything about any kind of like not just affordable housing or, you know, like public housing or all things that should be, I mean, I hate affordable because it's always like it actually just means it's like we're doing this to make a fuckload of money, and affordable to whom, like it's never specified. It's always way overpriced. But like any kind of thing that does anything besides build single family homes for rich white people, if you go to a community board meeting, not just in Chicago, let's be fair, in the Chicagoland region, on the Indiana side too, like you will fucking meet the Klan. Like they're not wearing robes and hoods, but like my God, like that is an aspect that I don't miss. And I'm gonna be real, I love Chicago so much. Honestly, like it's the coolest Midwest city. It's such a nice place. How many people have you met from Chicago? How many people?
We went to Chicago for my daughter's birthday last year, and we were wanting to go to Chicago. My wife and I hadn't been to we hadn't been to Chicago proper in decades. So
let me ask you this question. How many people do you know who are like from like white people who grew up in Chicago, not like the Chicago suburbs, not like Portage, Indiana, or fucking Valparaiso, Indiana, but like Chicago. Like how many?
I've known at least two or three.
I know one person who does in the army, and they were extremely racist. So like, it's got problems as a city. Like I said, but everywhere in America does.
It's a Midwest city.
Yeah. Like it's the Midwest in like it's the opposite of the Midwest in miniature. It's like the maximalist version of the Midwest, and like I said, love it there. Absolutely, especially if you go in like June and July, man. Like if it's not like a heat wave, it's so nice.
They've got great public transportation. Like
I mean, people that I know who live there have said actually the CTA has gotten a lot worse and it's very unreliable. But like relative to any other Midwest city, and I mean like you could maybe say Minneapolis because they have the light rail, but even then not really. It's the closest thing to a real system that you'll see anywhere in the region.
Like I can understand the argument that it's gone downhill, but I come from like basically
Bro,
we have the
where I
Metrolink.
where I grew up, there was no public transportation. If
Right.
you wanted to get on Indianapolis public transportation from where I lived, you would either have to walk or have someone drop you off so you could cross 96th Street on foot into Marion County and then pick up an Indigo bus that came like once an hour if you were lucky. Like, there is no public transportation where I'm from. So believe me, I get it. Like, they have the L, they have all that. But like, I just know people who have basically been like, they're leaving the city because at this point, trying to commute in and out of work with the CTA being unreliable has been a huge problem. But like at the same time, I think it's the same with New York, honestly. New York is probably I would say the city with the best public transit in America. And I commuted every day for 2 years. I mean, when I was in grad school, I commuted most days for 2 years. And then when I was working, I commuted every work day, from Central Brooklyn to Midtown East and back. So I spent about 2 hours a day on the subway. And I mean, like,
Yeah.
It's funny hearing Londoners complain, and we do have problems here with stuff, but like it's funny hearing Londoners complain about public transit because it's just such an order of magnitude better here. And it's the same kind of thing I imagine for you. It's like if you're used to Metrolink, like Chicago Transit Authority will seem extremely nice by comparison.
Well, and to be fair, the Metrolink is good. It just isn't it isn't as prevalent like everywhere. Like I don't have a Metrolink station anywhere near me at the moment. Like I would have to drive or take a bus to it. And also our problem is that like all of our stuff is nice and it runs on time, but people keep getting shot on the Metrolink itself or on the platforms because we're Missouri. So, we have our problems too.
Well, it's interesting too, because that's the thing, like St. Louis having the Metrolink is interesting because St. Louis is a city of comparable size to Indianapolis. And like, as I understand it, Indianapolis has expanded their bus rapid transit network and they've created like bus only lanes and things to actually like make it kind of a transit line and not just what I grew up with, which is Indigo, which sucked. But I struggle to imagine a scenario, and maybe I'm wrong, so Indianapolis heads, if you're out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I struggle to imagine a scenario where even if Indianapolis had the desire, had the money and the political will and like the popular support to do a more comprehensive mass transit line, they would. So the fact that St. Louis has one is actually really cool. I mean, like, yeah, if you could take if you could take a fucking train, like a an elevated train or a heavy gauge train or what's it called, light gauge train even from like the Indianapolis airport to Monument Circle or somewhere downtown or any like that would be cool.
I will say we have you can get on to the Metrolink at the airport and you can go downtown. You can go all the way out to Scott Air Force Base. Like they have the line goes all the way out to Illinois about, I don't want to say 20 miles into Illinois. There's a couple of spots. But yeah, it stops. They've like, no, we want the airmen to be able to come right on into St. Louis. However, they won't take it out to St. Charles where all the white people moved to when black people had the ability to buy houses and then the white flight happened. They don't want the Metrolink to go out there because, racism reasons. But on the whole, though, like it's a good system, and it's like fuck, I just wish we had the money to continue to expand it because, like, I feel like St. Louis could be doing better, and we're not. Like, and I feel like it's a lot of it's money problems. A lot of it has been stepping on our own dicks in a lot of different ways as well. But I digress with the problems of St. Louis, of which there are many and many and many, but. Our light rail system for what it is pretty good. It is surprisingly good for the kind of city that we are. I wouldn't have expected it, but we've had it for like 20 plus years at this point. So we're doing something right. We're doing a lot of things wrong, but we're doing something right as well.
Yeah, I would love to see Indianapolis grow to that extent. But I think that you have a lot of those kinds of cities in the Midwest. And I mean, elsewhere in America too, but it's weird. I mean, you'll notice this in places like they are red states in the South are actually building mass transit, but it's all private. You have, not high speed by any means, but a higher than slow, faster than driving speed train that they've built in South Florida. And I think the plan is eventually they're in the process of actually doing this. This is not pro Florida content, but it's just interesting to me. They are in fact building this train to run It's called Brightline to run from, I think it's Miami Beach or Miami to all the way to eventually to Tampa so I guess to St. Petersburg, Tampa, via Orlando, and it goes up the Atlantic coast and then onward. And on one hand, it's like, Florida would never let the state do anything like that because that's woke and gay. But people do actually seem to use it a lot. And I imagine that because all my experiences of driving in South Florida, it's fucking terrible driving. So having the ability to go to, I can't remember where it goes in the first, the initial line was very short, but it was very popular. But being able to go between, like Tampa, Orlando, and then down to Miami that's nice. But we do have Amtrak. It's just that, like, for example, after Hurricane Katrina, they just never opened the line back up between New Orleans and I believe Tallahassee. But the line that basically ran across the Gulf Coast, they just never turned it back on. And like I've taken Amtrak from Fayetteville, North Carolina to New York City and back. And it is nice that it exists and it is convenient in some ways. And it's certainly better than driving in some situations. But then other times it's not, when like the train is massively delayed and, it could save you time or it could make your journey like 50% longer. But it is interesting. Yeah. This was like, some red states. I mean, like, for example, Charlotte, North Carolina has light rail, which I just wouldn't have expected. And they seem, from what I can tell, to be expanding it. And obviously they are building a fast-ish train in Texas too. But once again, it has to be a private company because everything's got to be profit-seeking. And if the state does it, then it's gay and woke, and you have to destroy it and ban it and force the train to detransition and become a car. And so I don't know, like, it's a weird situation because plenty of other countries, other places in the world do it. But I'm also not going to necessarily single out just the United States because, quite frankly, Canada is also bad with trains and transit. Like, it's, some places are probably on a whole better served than their equivalents in America, but like, it's just a thing that we actually used to do pretty well in America. Like, as I understand it, and this might be apocryphal, but as I understand it, you used to be able to get from like Philly or New York all the way to like Madison, Wisconsin by just hopping between streetcar lines. Like, streetcars and those kinds of like electrified rail transit, small lines, etc., city lines, you could actually get that far. Like, they were that pervasive, and those all got ripped out to make bus lines and then just abandoned, or to make highways, and everything switched to car ownership. And that's when you get to, and I don't know if Indianapolis ever did. If they did, it certainly didn't go to where I grew up, because where I grew up was like a fucking one-horse town for forever until they integrated Indianapolis public schools. And then we won't talk about what happened then. But basically all the white people with money left and went to Hamilton County, where they, as I understand it, they weren't integrating, or they were still sundown towns, or they weren't busing. And so, that happened. And now it's this big, huge suburb. But yeah, we used to do trains. We used to do streetcars. LA used to have a ton of streetcars.
St. Louis did too. Like, you can, and there's places where you can see the old rail lines that they just kind of paved over, especially like anywhere that there's still some cobblestone. Like, every once in a while, St. Louis, like, we had this place called Laclede's Landing, which is where Pierre Laclede landed and started a fur trading company that became St. Louis. But it was all cobblestone, and it was just the most god-awful shit to drive on. And they finally, like, they tore it all out and reset the cobblestone, because they're like, we want to have people have this, kind of old-timey experience, but also we want people's catalytic converters to stop getting ripped out of the bottom by the massive potholes that we can't really fill. So it's nice that they kind of did that, but like, in some of those places where, you can still, like, oh, look, there is a street line here, there's a car line, there's at some point in time, they gave a shit about people getting from one place to another, and they got rid of that, and now everybody has to own a car for some fucking reason.
Yeah, what's funny is that, just because, out of curiosity, they do have trams in Geneva, and there's not a ton of them, but they do have them. I think they're Bombardier trains, the Bombardier Flexity, or they might be Stadler, I'm not sure, but because Stadler's a Swiss company, but I think they mostly make intercity trains. But they do have, like, I think like 4 or 5 lines, and they are expanding them. Like, that's the thing that's interesting, is that Geneva used to have a ton of streetcars, and they got rid of them. In most cases, I believe they took out the track, and it got to the point where like the only thing that was remaining was like one sort of like line that had basically become a novelty tourist line. But they started to realize, as I think a lot of places did, that buses competing with traffic wind up really, really getting delayed and overcrowded. It's much harder to, give signal priority because like, just the way that things are set up. And even with bus lanes, you then enter the problem that you have to then continually expand the roads, et cetera. Like it just, traffic basically never ends. Like the more roads you build, the more traffic there will be. And so they've started rebuilding them. And so they now they've actually since we've started going down there because, Cynthia's job, they've expanded a little bit, and they're in the process, for example, because Geneva is right on the border. It's like surrounded on all sides by the border with France. It's like maybe 2 miles from France, pretty much everywhere in the city. So there are a ton of commuter towns because of Schengen. You know what that is? Because I feel like if you don't, then like most American listeners might not either.
You should probably explain it.
Basically, I'm not Mr. EU law, but Switzerland is not an EU member, but it is party to the Schengen Agreement, which basically is the free movement agreement and the sort of lack of passport and border controls situation for the European Union. And so as a result, if you are an EU citizen, you can live in Switzerland as long as you're not like on public assistance, and you can take a job in Switzerland even if you're not a Swiss citizen. And so Switzerland having much higher wages than its neighboring countries means that a lot of French people who live or have moved to border towns live in France, get paid in euros, but work jobs in Switzerland and get you take advantage of the fact that like the Swiss salaries, wages, et cetera, are much higher. And so what we're probably like, because when you take the train down, you see a lot of these like really kind of sleepy and kind of falling apart towns near to there. But as you get closer to the border where it becomes like feasible to drive in or to get public transit in, these towns are actually quite bustling and growing because like as a result of this, I believe primarily as a result of this, like Haute-Savoie, the part of France on the south side of Lake Geneva, is like one of the wealthiest departments of France, like in terms of earnings. And so Geneva's actually like building, they've built like commuter rail, and they are in the process of expanding the tram networks as well, so that you can basically take a tram from, these border cities on the French side, was it Ferney-Voltaire or Annemasse, and Saint-Julien and Genevois and stuff like that, and then get into the city center so people can get in and out for work. But what's crazy about it is that two things. Number one is if you look at the old map, like basically they didn't have buses back then, but they had electric streetcars. And so the network is so gigantic if you look at the historical map, because there's so many more streetcar lines. And it's like, man, that would have been fucking sick. Like, it's just, I find them more reliable than taking a bus. But the second one I think is the point, and I'll leave it after this, is I have seen stuff that I just did not know you could do in Switzerland when it comes to streetcars and streetcar lines. For example, when I was there, I was waiting on a train. I think I was changing. I took a bus to Cornevant Station, the main station in Geneva, and was waiting on a tram so that I could go down to this area where I knew there was like a good like laundromat that we could use, where like you could pay with a card and stuff, and it was super like a self-service laundromat, because I was doing Cynthia's laundry while she was at work. And I saw a street sweeper truck mounted on a fucking platform with a transom to take the electric power from the tram network, and they were cleaning the road and the area of the road where the tram track had been laid by running a fucking like it's like an adapter, it's like when you have the little adapter that you put on the fucking like electric little race car tracks kind of thing. That's what it was, but for like a big, like a whole street sweeper truck. Like it wasn't a tram vehicle that had been built. They'd put it on a frame that was taking power to propel it off the I think they call it a transom, basically the overhead wire. And apparently in Zurich and in Bern too, I think they never ripped out the tracks. They just stopped running the trams, and now they're rebuilding the network too. And there, like after hours, when they're not doing public transit, like when the network shuts down at night, they do stuff like mail deliveries. Like they have cargo trams with like box truck trams full of like mail, for example, and they run like cargo trains of trams through the city. And I was just like, that's fucking badass. Like,
that's like the city planning on that kind of level is just so mind-bending to me. Like, hey, we've got this system. Like, yeah, I was just like, we built this slot car system here that we can, people can, drive up and down. But what else can we do with it? Like, what else can we just pop onto these tracks when people aren't doing it? And like, cargo, street sweepers, fucking anything else that you want. It's, and watching, we're really hearing about like any other city that's just like, what if we made some smart decisions? And it's just like, I don't know what that's like. I don't know how to comprehend a city that gives a shit about its people to a point. Like, it's not even like really like, sure, it's giving a shit about its people, but also like, I'm sure the municipality also and the city itself is just like, hey, I've got a great idea. We can save some money if we also pile all these other things on top of this like support structure that we already have. It's absolutely brilliant. And like, of course, like as you say it, I'm just like, well, of course, why wouldn't anybody do that? It makes perfect sense to do something like that. But, until I actually see it, it doesn't ping into my brain because I'm an American. We need to have specific vehicles that say, like our trash trucks that have the "Thank a Veteran for their freedom, for your freedom" emblazoned on the side of it and shit, and we're like St. Louis Cardinals on the side of our street sweepers and stuff. Like, man, there's got to be a way better way for us to do these things.
I know that you misspoke there, but I like the idea they just have a dead veteran embalmed on the truck, just like Lenin's corpse, but just to remind you that this is the guy who died for your freedom.
So, Nate, I want to. I came across a video yesterday, and Task and Purpose did a quick story on it, and I feel like we're good on our DadChat. I wanted to bring this up because it's incredibly fucking funny to me.
Okay.
Video shows mob beating 3 Marines in San Clementine, California. Now, that sounds bad. Mobs shouldn't beat on anybody. However, these were 3 Marines that get the shit kicked out of them by a bunch of unruly teens.
Okay.
So, an appalling video shared on social media shows the mob of dozens of people, many of whom appear to be teenagers, viciously attacking 3 Marines in San Clementine, California on May 26th. The Marine Corps is looking into the incident. Okay, so Lance Corporal Hunter Antonio told KCAL TV that he and 2 other Marines were off duty near San Clementine Pier when a group of between 30 and 40... San Clemente, sorry. San Clemente. I'm fucking Midwestern. Fuck off.
No, it's just San Clementine.
San Clementine. When a group of between 30 and 40 unruly teenagers began setting off fireworks. When debris from one of the fireworks struck him in the face, Antonio asked the teenagers to leave. Quote, "I told them we were Marines, so they would leave, but they didn't." Antonio, end quote. They just kept going at it. The crowd of teenagers followed the Marines to the pier and then fell upon them. Video taken of the assault, which was originally posted on Nextdoor, social networking. If you're not on Nextdoor, it is the most insane social network to be on. But it appears to show the teens taunting the Marines with one person yelling, "Get the fuck out of here." So if you watch the video, these kids just basically mob these 3 Marines for fucking with their day, and then kind of give them a little stomping out and then disperse. The Marines are on the ground. They're not fighting back. The teenagers continue to kick and punch. One onlooker yells a racial slur, while another one taunts the Marines by yelling, "What's up, pussies?" The assault begins to wind down when a woman and a man manage to move the crowd of teenagers away from the 2 Marines on the ground. So there's a lot more about the brawls and everything, but I personally am afraid of teenagers, as any middle-aged person should be, especially a group of teenagers. It is just very funny. These guys all seem fine. They got rolled a bit by 30 to 40 unruly teens coming to your yard. You need an AR-15 to take care of them kind of situation. But I encourage you to go and kind of and watch the video, because it is like, if I was in that situation, it wouldn't be very funny, but also I wouldn't be the one who's yelling, hey, I'm in the Marines and you guys need to fuck off.
Because like, I think there's a question of, when you're in a situation like that, if people are being stupid, that there's also like, if it's just 3 dudes against a crowd of 40 teen boys, like that could get really bad really fast. And it's like, you should have the ability to assess this. But if you don't, and you try to like, headbutt your way through it, then you're going to find out that despite what you learn at Marine basic training and advanced individual training, a crowd of 3 unarmed guys against 40 people is probably not going to go in the 3 guys' favor, even if they are Marines. And so I like I said, I sometimes find stuff like this, like I just choose to not watch it because like it'll either like, I feel like a bad person if I find it funny, but I also get like, if it bothers me, then like it kind of like gets my blood up a bit. And I'm just like, I'm a little uncomfortable. So it's one of the reasons why, for example, I don't have autoplay set on my Twitter feed, although I don't really use Twitter that much anymore, because I just simply don't like, there's certain things where I would rather not see a video, or like weirdly, and this may be a psychological thing. If there's a disturbing video that's like newsworthy that I have to watch, I often find that the only way that I can get through something like that, and this is odd, but is that I have to basically press play, then grab the little scrubbing bar, to scroll through and back and forth in the video, and scroll through it myself and like be in control of it. And if I do that, then like if I have to watch a video of like some newsworthy thing about like war crimes or the police murdering someone, then like that's the way I get. And like maybe admission of a little bit of vulnerability, but I guess like the years of when Twitter's autoplay like was by default, and I just saw people just getting like murdered on camera randomly because it was like, oh, a newscaster got shot live on TV or some bullshit like that. Like I avoid it. But in this situation, I do find it a little bit funny in the sense that it's like, guys, I hope you're okay. I hope you kind of learned a lesson here. This is dumb, and knowing the outrage it generates, it's probably going to wind up with like 40 kids getting fucking felony charges if they get identified. But Francis, I have to ask you a question. Did you read the comments? Because I did. You mentioned the story. I went to Task and Purpose. It's one of the top stories, like the top headline stories. And I went and looked, and this comment, granted, this is not your fault because this comment was published an hour ago. So you wouldn't have known unless you'd literally done this during the episode and you were reading it. I found a comment from Chip M that says, the question should be, how did 3 Marines destroy this mob? The problem here is leadership. Millie consumed with what he wants to learn about white rage. His decision-making has been wrong numerous times. All these cultural sensitivity emails and training, indoctrinating equity. DOD has even misled and taken its eye off its role as defense of this country. We need to be ready to fight. Retired.
I want to know. I want to see Chip take on 40 unruly teens, honestly.
Me too. Chip, go fight. You can't bring a gun. You can't bring a knife. You can't bring any weapon. You can only your fists will save you. Police will not help you. It's like that fucking NES game. You can only trust your fists. Police will never help you. You have to defeat the mob of San Clemente teens. The ruliest, backwards hat, weed-smoking ass teens you've ever met. They have a fucking wizardly grasp of TikTok. Like, they know about racist memes that you haven't even fucking conceived of, that you and the boys back in Nam trading the absolute worst racial slurs you could think of. You can't even touch these kids. When they want to know something about the news, it has to be filtered through playing fucking playing 100 gex and also having a video overlaid of someone playing a video game while someone is giving them a PowerPoint. It's the only way they can pay attention to it. Like, they are operating on a brain level you cannot even conceive of. Are you ready to fight them? Are you ready to take them on like you're Mike Hager in Final Fight?
Right. Your retired ass is going to take on 30 to 40 kids who have just pounded down a whole bunch of MD 2020 and started throwing M80s at each other. Like, these kids don't give a shit. Those kids are braver than those Marines at this point. They've seen more combat than those Marines have.
Yeah, they've seen more combat going to fucking school in America. Fuck, sorry. I can't believe I said that. I'm going to leave it in, but I still can't believe I said that.
And also, like, you have to remember, like, this is a Lance Corporal. These are young. So these Marines are not that much older than these kids either. But, like, I understand that, like, feeling of, like, well, I'm a Marine. I'm an adult, and they have to listen to me as an adult. And, like, just getting that like entire thing disabused. It's like, no, nobody has to listen to you because you're a Marine. And in fact, it's probably going to work against you.
Right. If you were like demonstrably an insane adult, and like it sounds like the crowd basically listened to people not trying to kind of fucking oorah them to death. Like it sounded like yeah, some quote unquote civilians showed up and basically were like, hey, like what the fuck are you doing? And talk these kids down. But yeah, like if you are only about this, like a couple years older than these kids, you're sort of assessed as their peers, but you have, high and tights, and you're basically like, I'm in JROTC, you have to listen to my authority. Like, what do you think's going to happen? Like, look, I've left it behind, but I did grow up in the Midwest in the 90s and early 2000s. Like, I understand the mind of the bully. And it's like, I'm sorry, but you have just made yourself a huge bullying target. It's like the only people who are really into the fact, who are going to respect you because you're a Marine are Facebook grandmas. And even then, only like tenuously. Like, they don't actually understand anything. They just kind of like the concept of you. The Facebook grandmas are going to really approve of you, and then they're going to read your last name and see that it looks kind of Hispanic and then say something racist. So, like, it's just
the only person in this mob of kids that could have helped him is the you're disrespecting a future U.S. Army soldier kid.
Well, yeah, because
unfortunately, I think that guy's already a soldier. And probably would have gotten his ass kicked
he's
too.
Literally in fucking SFOD Delta right now. So he's basically like, he's in the process of planning out the exfil mission because a helicopter of Navy SEALs has crashed and killed like 20 civilians and 20 SEALs, and there's also 12 survivors who are all going to write books, and he has to get each one of them out on a fast rope somehow.
Can you imagine if Osama bin Laden had like 40 San Clemente fucking unruly? Can you imagine if the Osama bin Laden, instead of having a bunch of sex slaves, had a bunch of unruly teens? Those fucking McHooyah would have had his nuts crushed in halfway through.
Well, that's the thing, right? McHooyah he's only violated the territorial integrity of Pakistan to do a raid where he crashes a helicopter. He's never actually had to go and fight fucking California teenagers. I don't want to run my mouth and say something stupid because I don't actually know exactly where San Clemente is. I think it's in Southern California, which would make sense because most fucking Marines in California are in San Diego, or was it Camp Pendleton? But I don't know. San Clemente might literally be right by Eureka. I have no idea, but I kind of doubt it because there's a pier, right? So like water, etc. I'm assuming it's near-ish Southland, somewhere like that. So yeah, I don't know California that well. I kind of wish I did, but then also like if you get to be my age and you live in California, you either become cool like our friend Stefan the lawyer, or you become the guy from Falling Down.
Those are the only two like directions that you can go. And yeah, I hung out with Stefan in California, and he showed me all the cool stuff. So
yeah, you said you can be a cool guy. You can be like a super cool fucking guy. Kind of balancing act, living your life in the bullshitness of all the sort of pressure cooker of California, or you become Michael Douglas in Falling Down, and you get valorized for all the fucked up shit that you do when you decide to just go on a shooting spree. In a way, like. Yeah, to me, like California is a very pleasant place, but also like the California suburbs, in my experience, I have more in common with Falling Down than people want to acknowledge. And the fact that like Orange County is like the birthplace of the John Birch Society and a lot of the really intense reactionary, Republican, conservative, psycho, xenophobic stuff. And, it gave us Ronald Reagan and Reaganism. It gave us Pete Wilson. It gave us a lot of the stupid laws that red states passed, basically trying to criminalize being an immigrant. Like those wouldn't pass in California now. They just passed those laws for poor people and unhoused people. But like those laws got their start. That style of shit got its start in California in the 80s and 90s. I think 90s primarily. And so, yeah, man, like. I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit talking about, because there's a part of me sometimes when I living in the United Kingdom and living in Europe in general, when it's December and it's darker than fuck, and you can get on Google Street View and you can be like, oh, Los Angeles looks so nice. It's so sunny, so warm. Like I could just, I'm an American citizen. I could just move to LA.
Yeah.
But then
you'd be in America.
Yeah, I'd be in America. And then also like, I don't know. I really think my life is better because the circumstances of my life have allowed me to not own or need a car for the last more than 10 years. I would probably have a certain element of convenience in my life if I had a car available, but I don't need one. And, I'll probably wind up getting one in Switzerland because it's really easy to get a Swiss license if you have an American license. So I will break the streak, but I really like not having a car. And honestly, I think owning a car makes you go a little insane. I don't know.
It does.
I don't want to ramble, so I'm going to ask you your take, but I feel as though owning a car and driving in traffic makes you crazy. It starts to make you antisocial at best and crazy at worst.
Yes. When I got to start working from home 8 years ago and no longer had to deal with traffic on a regular basis, and even my wife, like she, because her schedule is a little bit more flexible, she takes Lily to the appointments and things like that during the day. But none of us ever have to deal with like rush hour traffic, and when we do, it's just the most maddening, insane thing because it's just like why are all of you here?
Right. It makes you basically hate humanity and society. You drive and you think, why are all these stupid assholes alive and in my way? And it's like on a long enough timeline, that just becomes your worldview. And then you move to fucking Irvine, California.
Yeah, and you are the stupid asshole in people's way as well. But it's just there's nothing. You got to get from point A to point B because your office because real estate needs you to go into an office rather than set something up at home where you're more comfortable and don't have to wear pants every day.
Yeah, honestly, man, I will probably get a car so that we can do things like there's a lot of big box stores right across the border because stuff is cheaper in France. So we might get a car. Also, there's some things where like, down the line, like my parents come to visit, it'd be nice to pick them up from the airport, stuff like that. So, and then obviously like there's some places in the country where it's a little easier to get to with a car versus with train, although it's quite easy to get pretty much everywhere by train or by bus. But yeah, it will be a solid, because I did own a car in Korea, but I only ever used it for tooling around the base. It'll literally be more than 10 years that I haven't owned a car. And you know what? My life can be very inconvenient sometimes because of this. And I realize I'm a spoiled baby and incredibly privileged in some ways, but it's pretty nice. So that's just my take. Streetcars are cool. Trains are cool. Buses are actually cool, but like bus is my least favorite just because it winds up being it seems like it's the most prone to car problems because of other cars, because it is just a big car. And yeah, you know what? Don't become the guy from Falling Down. Don't go crazy. Don't drive your car too much.
Yeah, or just listen to some peaceful music or something,
or a good podcast where you get to ask dads questions.
Exactly. Do we have a question?
Oh, we've got a lot of questions, Francis. Someone asked a question about panic attacks, and before I ask it, I was going to ask, I don't really experience panic attacks. I wanted to ask if you did or you were comfortable talking about it, because we can cut this out, but like if you want to talk about that, or I can do another question.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've had a panic attack. And I was always like, my panic attacks aren't really triggered by anything. It's just like on occasion for about 10 minutes, I have to sit down and I can't move. And like my brain is very fuzzy and I get tunnel vision. But I'm like, there's nothing just like, oh, I'm, worried about X, Y, and Z, because I'm constantly worried about shit, like I'm a dad. I'm an American in my middle ages. I constantly worry about, money and access to things that we need and, rising fascism and shit like that. So like, I don't really get a panic attack, but like when, and it has been like, it's been a while since I did, but I did get them a lot when I was younger. And if the question is how do you deal with it, I sit down. Like I sit down. Like the last time I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm having a panic attack. It's just like, do you need anything? And I said, nope. I just need to sit down. I'm gonna lay down on the bed and close my eyes, and it's gonna eventually go away. And that's the thing. Like when I have this, it feels more like a physiological thing instead of just like an emotional thing. I'm not specifically panicking about anything. I'm not, particularly stressed, but I do, like, I can recognize it. And I think recognizing things in your body, like I'm coming off of a cold. I've been coming off of a cold for fucking a week at this point. And one thing that I'm realizing is I have to quit smoking weed. Like I have to quit the act of smoking and vaping and things like that, because, I can listen to my body and say, okay, this is not going well for me. It's taking a week for me to cough all this shit up out of my lungs. It shouldn't be like this. Same kind of thing. You have to be able to recognize it and kind of have a plan in place. Like if you are prone to panic attacks, what is the thing that helps you with it? Like, analyze it. Don't be afraid of your panic attack because it's going to happen one way or the other, I assume. So instead of being worried and like, what am I going to do? Figure out the things that do help. I know with my daughter, we just got her a lava lamp because it really helps calm her down when she's freaking out about something, or if she's just like, she gets herself worked up, she can go to her room, turn off her lights, stare at the lava lamp. It's got little sparkles in it rather than the big globby stuff. So, that's I am always going to be a person to tell you that like the person who knows your body the best is you. And if these are things that happen to you, be proactive about it. Think about it. And think about, here's the things that I know can help. And don't be afraid to tell, like, look, I'm having a panic attack. I got to sit down. Like, cause if you try to hide it and then it's going to make things worse. You're going to try to hide it and then you're going to panic because you're trying to hide a panic attack. If you got to sit down for 10 minutes, fucking sit down for 10 minutes, do what you need.
I don't necessarily know if I've ever had a panic attack, but I have had what I would describe as like a pretty intense amount of anxiety kind of, and I didn't feel like I was dying, but I felt incredibly uncomfortable. Like I felt as though, like I didn't feel normal. I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel comfortable, like in private or in public, and I found that for me, those were brought on by alcohol. And so that was like the first indication that I really had to take a step back. This happened when I was still in the Army, actually. I mean, I'd gone through an incredibly stressful period of my life. And, I can recall, my normal Army weigh-in weight was probably anywhere from like, let's say 190 to 195. I'm probably about 10 pounds heavier than that now. But I was down to like 178 when I was in Korea, which, at 29, being 6 feet tall and 178 pounds, like that's very thin for me. And it was because I was not eating enough and I was smoking too much and, was just constantly in the field. So I wasn't drinking, but I'd go out and we would, binge and stuff. And I stayed out all night once and came in at like 7 a.m. To this guest house I was staying in Seoul, slept and got up and was going to go out the next night. And it suddenly hit me just incredible anxiety of not wanting to leave the room, not feeling safe. And I had to eat something. So I forced myself to go out and get some noodles, but it was like the most uncomfortable fucking meal of my life. And it was just the first time this had happened. And I started to realize that like, I couldn't handle large amounts of alcohol and the fatigue and the stress and all that stuff. I couldn't do all-nighters. Like it would make me feel that way. And so I've been lucky that, some people like it. I'm very fortunate. Some people have it happen where it just comes out of nowhere and it's not like there's any behavior they have to change that would stop it from happening. Like they just happen. I don't really have that. And I've been very lucky about it. But I do know that in terms of my own anxiety, there's certain things that I have to manage. And there's some things you can't control. But some things, I know that if I do them, that the consequences are going to be that I feel worse. I feel uncomfortable. I feel unable to like just relax and be a normal person. And like I said, I don't want to become Mr. Shill for the pharmaceutical industry, but the attention deficit disorder meds that I've been put on have helped a lot with my ability to handle like a big crowded hot situation. Like I was at a concert last night with Irish Tom and my buddy Safine, and I drank as socially appropriate. But normally in a situation that hot and crowded, I think I would have probably drank a lot more to be comfortable. Didn't feel like I needed to. And so I'm able to be functional today, whereas in the past I would have drank too much, and then today I would have been a fucking nervous wreck. And Cynthia and I have a band we really like, and we're actually going to go see a show tonight, and we have to sit down in seats because she's pregnant, obviously, but we are going to do that. And I'm grateful I didn't fuck myself by being too anxious from being in a hot, crowded venue last night that I drank so much that now I'd be a stress monster. You know what I mean? So I've learned and I've made some changes, and I know that there's certain things that will cause problems if I don't avoid the behaviors, and I learn through doing. I learn through repeating mistakes and figuring out what worked. So probably not as helpful of an answer because I don't think I have that same experience, but I have had periods of very profound anxiety, and I had to sort of like trial and error figure out what helped to reduce that, because obviously like it sucks, and you have my sympathies because it's a really hard way to fucking to get through shit. So that's my advice is basically.
Always kind of look in and see like, well, what are the bad choices that I'm making? And it's hard to break bad habits. I know, like I used this cold to break my coffee habit. Like, it's cool. I haven't drank coffee in like 2 weeks at this point. And that has been really helpful. I haven't really smoked weed. I kind of moved over to edibles, and it's a little bit easier on my lungs and everything. And it takes, like, I'm 40, and it's taking me this long to realize inhaling burning vegetative matter into my lungs is a bad idea in the long term. I fucking smoked for 12 years as well, so I should know better. So don't feel like, oh God, I should be doing better, and I should have been doing, because I'm 40 and I'm still fucking figuring stuff out. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, don't use it as an excuse to continue doing things that are going to cause the problem. But like, yeah, you do, it is a process, and you learn by evaluating, what works and what doesn't. But Francis, I know we both have to run, so thank you again. This has been a great episode. And friends of the show, listeners, people, if you want to hear more, of course, for $5 a month, you can have access to all of our Patreon bonus content dating all the way back to 2017 that has interviews with people we like. It has Zoo Crew of Shocks, Joe, and Francis. It has them reviewing Deadwood. It has them reviewing things like HBO's Rome, Generation Kill, all sorts of stuff. So anything you want to hear, if you like hearing us talk, and plenty of dad chats too. They started out as just bonuses. There's all this stuff out there. So there's a link in the show notes. And if you aren't going to subscribe, that's fine. Like, no one has to. But it would help us a lot if you like this show to share it with a friend who you think might like it, because I think over the years we found that the best way for more people to discover this is through word of mouth. So we really appreciate if you do that. And we look forward to hearing your comments as well. So until later, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you next week.